This project began at Goodwill Outlet. Yes, Goodwill Outlet. Place is wild. It's a concrete warehouse that just sells things by weight. So I don't know if this is the first stop or last stop of Goodwill merchandise, but they just wheel it out in these big tubs and you can just buy by weight. So you just roll your cart right up on the scale and pay by weight. So I got all these towels for unbelievably cheap. Step one is getting your materials together. You're going to need to build a frame for your panel. Here I've got some leftover dowel rod from some curtains I'm no longer using. So I'm just measuring these up, just putting some marks on there to get cut. I'm just going to make 2 rectangles with the dowel rods that we've got here. Now you're going to bust out your fancy sawhorse and just go ahead and make the cuts on each of the lines. Easy peasy. Just follow through on all your cuts. No magic here. Again, we're just making 2 rectangles. So however much material you got, just make a rectangle. That's all I can really suggest here. And then most importantly of all, clean as you go. Everything's cleaned up. You can go ahead and start building the rest of our frames. So I do not own a power saw, but I did use a handsaw and kind of cut out a little notch for my first frame here, which wasn't super flush, but it is all right. It worked okay. And then for the second one, I just pre-drilled a hole and put my bolts right into the frame. I did leave a little nubbin on the end there, so I just went ahead and got that cleaned up, but now my frames are together and they're flush and secure. So let's go ahead and run the vacuum again because I'm just making a mess as I go. And we can admire Miss Moxie. Queen Moxie sees a shape on the ground and she's got to sit in it. And oh God, and here come all the towels. So here I'm just cutting the towel to shape. This outside towel needs to be a little bit bigger than our frame by a few inches. And then we're just gonna stack our towel remnants in the frame. Try to use as large pieces as you can, fold them back if you can, because again we want all these nice and stacked in our frame. So now that you have your towels kind of stacked, you want to get a thimble and a needle and some kind of thick string and run some stitches. I did 3 rows, 1 down each side and 1 down the middle. Each stitch was about 2-3 inches apart. Just enough to hold the towels in place so they don't sag once we mount this thing vertically. And then I put my frame back in place and using a stapler just went to town with the staples, stapling that outside towel to the frame. And then once we have that attached, we want to put a little decor on this thing. So I'm just using a little paisley fabric and just folding it over, and again just stapling it like a madman. I'm not too worried what the back side looks like. Again, it's just going to be mounted on a wall, but as long as the front's nice and smooth. So I'm just stitching up the second pad here, and you can watch Moxie thinks that there's something underneath there that she's got to get to. She's just helping me find the string, having a ball. So here I am just stitching towels together. Again, we're going about every 2-3 inches, just pulling it through. With the black towel there, you can see all the stitching. Here I'm just cutting out the corners of the towel because I found on the other one the corners got a little bunched up, so I'm just kind of removing some material to make those folds a little cleaner, and just using a little pressure and pulling the towel. You can slam more staples into it. Again, just removing more material there to make the corners clean, and staple, 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 staple. And then bam. And then, yep, just like we did last time, get a nice clean piece of fabric over the top. Reload the staple gun. I probably reloaded it a bunch of times doing this. I used a lot of staples. And also, if you're using a staple gun, use a hammer and hammer in your staples, because the hammer will actually push the tines of the staples into the wood to make sure they stay. I don't know if I recorded that. So here you can see I've got my sheet on and it's ready to go. So the last step, I just used my drill and put in some screws with some big heads, and I used a little bit of metal string to kind of go across, and used some wire snips and tied them up, tighten down the strings, and these things are ready to hang. All right, we got them on the wall. They're amazing. Check the next video to see how well they work. And as always, thanks for hanging out and watching me be a dork. Thanks again. Bye.